we go. All right. Well, thank you very much, Gene and Stefan. I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak today. It's early in the morning here, and I guess late in the afternoon for everyone else. So when you have a chance to have a beer before I do, just think of me, and I'll catch up later. So what I want to do today is to give you an overview of the federal incentives for small wind in the U.S. And although many of you may know me from my position at Bergey Wind Power, today I'm speaking as the president of our trade association, the Distributed Wind Energy Association. And for those of you not familiar with DWEA, we represent the behind-the-meter or off-grid portion of the market. So we don't represent the wind farms industry, the large merchant plants. That's done by the American Wind Energy Association. But we formed DWEA about 10 years ago because of very different policy needs for distributed or small wind and for large wind. And we found that working within the large wind organization, while we had a voice, it often wasn't heard because of the power of the large wind lobby. So we formed our own separate trade association. I want to start with a statement on the potential for distributed wind in the U.S. We don't have feed-in tariffs, so people our customers install systems to reduce their electric bills. So we call that behind the meter. NREL, National Renewable Energy Laboratory, is a laboratory of the U.S. Department of Energy, and they do a lot of work in the renewable energy field. In 2016, they did a market study on distributed wind and came up with numbers that are quite impressive. So it's distributed wind of all sizes, but behind the meter, almost 50 million sites and 3 terawatts of capacity potential for systems below 1 megawatt and 5 terawatts of capacity for larger systems. That's more generating capacity than is currently installed in the US and would produce more energy than we currently consume in the US. One of the important statistics that came out of that is that the potential for distributed wind in the US is larger than the potential for offshore wind. So we have a lot of potential, but we have not yet so far realized that potential. And I will reinforce John's comment that policy is extremely important. So all renewables require incentives to create the markets. And while government can help support R&D and lower costs with new technology and manufacturing support, you really need those market incentives to create the market pull to increase manufacturing and installation volume to drive prices down. So we recognized at DWEA that these favorable policies rarely, if ever, just happen. We have to work for them. We have to show a vision, and we have to work to get those policies enacted and protected. And so DWEA is the voice of small and medium wind in distributed applications in the US. We do some things at DWEA, like publish reports like this one from 2015, which is a vision report and covers a lot of information on where the technology is, where it can go, what the benefits are, and that sort of thing, and it set a goal. If you haven't seen this report, I recommend that you take a look at it. It's available online at the DWEA website, which is below. And I assume you're going to be able to get the slides after this. DWEA primarily focuses on federal policies. Incentives are an important part of that. Research funding for the Department of Energy is an important part of that. But the incentives are what really drives the market. In the US, we have the primary federal incentive, which is available to all all markets in the US, is what we call an investment tax credit. It has been 30% for the last 3 years, but it's declining now and scheduled to expire in 2022. So this year, in 2020, it's 26%. Next year, it'll be 22%. It's available for wind turbines up to 100 kilowatts that are certified either to the American National Standard or to the IEC 61400 standards, -1, -11, -12. The investment tax credit is quite different from the feed-in tariffs and other and rebate programs that you see in some other countries, because what it is a reduction in the income tax that a taxpayer would pay the federal government. So you would, for example, make your investment this year, but not be able to get that savings until you filed your taxes in the first quarter of 2021. And also it has a limitation in that you have to have a tax obligation. If you're a nonprofit organization or you are not profitable and don't pay taxes, you can't use this benefit. And it's not something you can sell to another entity, another taxpayer. So it does have some limitations. There is, although it's set to expire, there are some strong political forces in Washington, D.C., representing multiple technologies, including solar, that are pushing for an extension of 5 years at 30%, and it looks favorable for that. The Republicans are not supportive, but it's very strong Democratic support, and it seems to be moving along. Our association is pushing to raise the limit for 10 megawatts. There's no limit for solar. So we're pushing to raise that limit. We want to extend the ITC for 5 years at the 30% rate, and we want to provide a permanent commercial 10% credit, which solar already enjoys. So that's what we're working on now. There is also a depreciation benefit, and depreciation is only available to commercial taxpayers, and it's supposed to provide a return on the capital expenses that a business would make in machinery or renewable energy equipment. Only available to commercial taxpayers, and essentially it's been improved over the years to now it's 100% depreciation, which means you can fully write off the investment in the first year. And so what that does is reduce your net profits and therefore the corporate income tax that you have to pay. There's some details. The basis, the amount that you can depreciate, is reduced by half of the investment tax credit. So it would be reduced by 13% this year, or so it would be 87% of whatever you spend to install a wind system. And it's available for wind systems of any size. And then its value, its actual value, depends upon the corporation's tax rate. So if the corporation only pays a 10% tax rate, then it's only worth 10% of whatever the investment was. If you are at a higher rate, say 25%, it's worth more in terms of reducing or providing a return on your investment. But it's an important benefit for taxpayers that can use both. You're talking about so it would be a commercial operation. They could get recapture about 50% of the full investment using both the investment tax credit and the depreciation. So it is important. Another important incentive in the U.S., although a little problematic for our industry, is the U.S. Department of Agricultural REAP grants and loan guarantees. This is kind of a complex program, and I apologize if I bore you by going through some of the details, but I think it's important to understand its value and its limitations in case you're interested in the U.S. market. So it's only for rural businesses, not for rural homes. It can provide 25% grants um, uh, with a $2,500 minimum and a $500,000 maximum, and loan guarantees or loan guarantees. You can have both. There are certain limitations on mixing them, but the loan guarantees can provide up to 75% of the total funding with a minimum of $5,000 and a maximum of $25 million. That's not a direct loan. It's a guarantee on a bank loan that you would get. And so you would go and find a commercial loan, and where the USDA would then guarantee that loan, and typically you can get a lower rate and get an easier time getting that commercial loan. It's a popular program. There's $50 million available for grants each year, and because of the leveraging of the loans, I think they loan guaranteed about $150 million last year. So a fair amount of money. The process involves an application, and the application is difficult and time consuming, and it's very competitive. So there's only a certain amount of money, and so they rank the applications and fund as many as they can with the money they have. This web link gives the program details for further information. But a couple of comments that I want to make about it is that they have a special category for grants under $20,000. So if you get a 25% grant, that means if your project installs for less than $80,000, then you can use this program. And it's important, this part of the program. And that's important because you have a simplified application. So it's only a quarter of an inch thick, and not a half an inch thick. The applications are made through the state offices, and it's set up so that the scoring for the applications favors less expensive technologies like solar, and that's presented a problem for small wind because as a more expensive technology currently, we often get scored less and have poor success in getting the grants. So solar has been getting most of the grants. As a result, and of course that's imported solar. So DWEA is working to establish a set aside or reserve fund, about 10%, $5 or $10 million of that funding for what we call underserved technologies like small wind and biogas. And therefore we would just compete with more expensive technologies and not compete with the cheaper technologies like solar. And so we think that's an important improvement in the program, and we're working hard to achieve that. So let me cover now a little bit about DWEA. I said that we exist primarily to promote federal policies, and we do that with no paid staff, no office, and very low overhead expenses, so that almost all of our membership dues go to federal lobbying. And we have a lobbyist in Washington. He also works for other renewable energy industries, mostly in agricultural sectors. So it's a complementary relationship. But Lloyd Ritter, and that's a picture of Lloyd there on the right, giving our annual award to Representative Loebsack of Iowa, and that was just earlier this week. We host a annual lobby day and business conference. It's typically the last week of February. It's in Washington, D.C. It occurred just last week. No one caught the coronavirus, so it was very successful. And we do a lobby day. So we go up on Capitol Hill, visit the offices of senators and representatives, House of Representatives, and on important committees and in leadership. This year we had 30 people participating. We visited 42 House and Senate offices, and we had participants from the Netherlands, Italy, and India. So this is a very important event for us. We get a lot of it looks like we're a much larger industry than we are, and we get a much we get treated like one of the big technology industries because of this. Um, for our memberships, we also offer monthly federal policy webinars. We've been using this same GoToMeeting platform, which we like very much, and so it makes it easy for our members to listen in. And then we do a lot of action alert emails to let people know of opportunities or when we need them to write their congressman and that sort of thing. So finally, I'd like to give you two invitations. First, if you're a manufacturer of good quality small wind turbines, I invite you to come to the US market. We have lost some of our major manufacturers, Northern Power Systems, Xeris, Southwest Wind Power, Jacobs, because of cheap solar modules coming in. But the industry is bouncing back. We're getting more favorable incentives, getting treated better, and state policy as well. And we need more good quality products here in the U.S. market to help grow the industry. DWEA membership dues are shown here. We'd be happy to have foreign companies come in as a supporter one level, $600, which we can bill monthly or quarterly. And if you're interested in that, it's a great way to get a view of the US market, and we would welcome your support. With that, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I don't know, John, about questions now or later, but
Yes,
I'd be happy to answer them.